My boss looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You'll never be missed." That was 8:42 a.m. By 3:17 p.m., the entire company began to collapse. Systems failed. Clients screamed. Shareholders panicked. But no one knew why. And I said nothing. You see, they took everything from me. My time, my ideas, my peace. So I left them something in return. Not a bomb, not revenge, just truth. And truth can be fatal. Have you ever walked out of a place knowing you were the fuse? Because I did. And the moment I closed that door, the countdown started. They called me the backbone of the system. Not to my face, of course. No one in that building ever looked me straight in the eyes unless something was broken. I wasn't on the posters. I didn't get handshakes at quarterly meetings. But I was the architect of the algorithm that tracked every keystroke, every login, every time someone exhaled between Slack messages. And I believed, at least in the beginning, that it would help people, make them better, sharper, more accountable. I believed I was building something good. Most nights, I left the office when the moon was already high, slipping into my car with red eyes and an empty stomach. And every night, like a ritual, I stood at my daughter's bedroom door, watching her sleep. She always curled into the corner of her bed, arms wrapped around the stuffed fox I gave her when she was 3. I lost count of how many nights I missed tucking her in. That night, I whispered, "Tomorrow, I'll be home earlier." I lied. The first warning sign came wrapped in praise. Eric, the man whose name was embossed on every project I helped create, called me into his glass office. He smiled like a man selling poison as vitamins. "We're moving you up," he said, sliding over a folder with a fresh title, Senior Surveillance Architect. The letters gleamed like a promotion, but something in my chest twisted. No raise, no team, just a title, a leash with a shinier collar. "You'll have more freedom to operate," he said. "No one will bother you." He meant no one will see you. That evening, I tried accessing the back-end resource pool to schedule a security patch. My credentials failed. I tried another subnetwork. Blocked. I checked the permissions tree. I'd been moved to a lower tier. Without a word, I was locked out of the architecture I'd built. I stared at the screen, fingers hovering. A promotion without access. A name without a door. I opened a secondary log folder, something only a few engineers even knew existed. That's when I saw it. Activity logs under my username, ones I hadn't triggered. Someone was faking my presence. Patching systems, redirecting alerts. My ID had become a puppet. At home, my wife sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling through her tablet. She didn't look up when I came in. "They promoted you?" she asked, not with pride, but suspicion. "Yeah." Her eyes flicked toward me. "Do you think they did that because they value you? Or because they need someone quiet to take the fall?" I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. Later that night, I returned to my workstation and began digging deeper. If they were moving against me, I needed evidence. That's when I stumbled on something worse, a mirrored data set. The system I built to monitor employees was also monitoring me. Private calls transcribed, emails archived, facial recognition tags every time I yawned. I thought I was the architect, but I was also the product. "David," Eric had said once, leaning back in his chair, "you're the soul of this place, the silent engine. That's what makes you special. People don't notice you, and that's good." That line haunted me more than I admitted, because it meant he'd never intend to give me visibility. I wasn't supposed to rise. I was supposed to run quietly until I burned out. I backed out of the logs and closed my laptop, my heart racing. I'd spent 6 years building a system that stripped privacy down to its bones, and I'd volunteered my own first. The next morning, an anonymous internal memo landed in my inbox. No header, no signature, just a subject line. Check HR misconduct, Truk logs, forged, 2025 QI. I hesitated, then followed the path. There it was, a report filed under my name, stating that I had failed to report an internal breach, that I had possibly manipulated the AI algorithm. The timestamps were altered. The justification? Suspected abuse of system resources. The worst part? The language sounded like me. Someone had studied my style, my formatting. It was a forgery, but a damn convincing one. And the kicker? That file had been created 2 days before my promotion. I looked out the office window where Eric stood in the parking lot, laughing with 2 board members. The sun caught his silver cufflinks. He'd planned this, or someone had, with him as the smiling face of it all. Tell me, have you ever celebrated a win only to realize you were stepping into a cage? Have you ever smiled at your own execution order, thinking it was a certificate? I had. The morning after I found the forged report, something inside me shifted. I stopped answering emails with ideas. I skipped the brainstorming calls. I logged in at 9, logged out at 5, did the bare minimum, and watched. They didn't notice. Or maybe they didn't care anymore. Either way, the silence was louder than any reprimand. It felt like fading on purpose. Like being a ghost, they accidentally kept on payroll. For the first time in years, I didn't stay late. I got home before sunset. My daughter sat at the table, coloring with half-broken crayons. She didn't look up when I entered. I bent down to kiss her on the head. She flinched. My wife gave me a look I couldn't meet. I sat across from our daughter and asked, "What are you drawing?" She shrugged. "A robot." I tried to smile. "What's his name?" She kept coloring. "You don't remember my name, so why should I remember his?" The words cut deeper than anything Eric ever said. That night, I opened the codebase archive on my personal drive. I found a segment I wrote nearly 3 years ago, a maintenance protocol with backdoor access. It was built as a failsafe in case the AI looped into dangerous patterns. Only 3 people knew about it. I was one. The other 2 had been fired long ago. But the code had changed. Someone had edited it. Badly. The syntax was familiar, but wrong. They left fingerprints, little inefficiencies, careless comments in the log that weren't mine. And yet, the file metadata still showed me as the last author. They weren't just forging reports now. They were rigging the system to crash and pinning the bomb to my name. If I deleted the code, they'd know I found it. If I left it, I'd be liable when it broke. I stared at the blinking cursor, then shut the screen. I couldn't win this by playing their game. The next day, just before lunch, a notification pinged on my private device. No sender, just a line of text. "They're building a case. You're the scapegoat. Get out." I froze. 2 hours later, I was summoned to the 10th floor, Conference Room A, the one with the long table and the mirrored walls that made everyone feel smaller. The room was already full. Eric sat at the head. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes scanned like a hawk. They had printed the log reports, dozens of pages, highlighted errors. My name circled in red ink. Eric slid the stack across the table. "Looks bad, David." I didn't respond. "You've been overseeing the AI's integrity protocols. These failures happened under your ID. How do you explain that? I can't, I said. That stunned him. He raised an eyebrow. You're not even going to defend yourself? I leaned back in the chair. What would be the point? He nodded, then smiled. I always said you were efficient, but it's time we move forward. HR will handle your exit. He stood, offered a hand I didn't take. You'll never be missed, David. I looked him in the eyes, smiled for the first time in months, and reached into my bag. It wasn't a weapon, just a USB drive. Thin, silver, unlabeled. I set it on the table. You might want to hold on to that. It has redundancies. His expression flickered. For a moment, the calm cracked. Then I walked out, past the conference room, past the glass doors, past the building that had once felt like a second skin. It was 2:41 p.m. I didn't go home. I sat in my car, engine off, and stared at the clock. At 5:43 p.m., I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't answer. At 5:51 p.m., my former colleague texted me, "What the hell did you do? The AI just went dark in 3 departments." At 6 Micah p.m., someone posted on an internal forum, "All log access denied. Monitoring loop failing. We're blind." And at 6:17 p.m., Eric called. I didn't pick up. Tell me. Have you ever walked out of a place so quietly, no one noticed, until it was too late? Have you ever been the one holding the match while they stood in a room full of gas? Because I didn't need revenge. I just needed them to feel the silence I'd lived in for 6 years. The USB wasn't a bomb. It wasn't a virus. It was something more elegant, more surgical. Protocol 13. A contingency script I'd written 4 years ago and hidden so deep in the system, no security audit ever touched it. It didn't destroy anything. It didn't corrupt data. It simply confused the machine. It introduced noise, rewrote permission paths in loops, redirected false alerts, randomized timestamps. It turned the AI into a drunk mirror, still running, but unable to distinguish between real threats and phantom echoes. I executed the command from a private terminal, encrypted through a cascade of dummy nodes. Within minutes, the system began its descent. Slowly, subtly, like a man forgetting his own name. Then I unplugged. I slept better than I had in years that night. No nightmares. No alarms. Just stillness. The next morning, I made pancakes. My daughter stared at me across the table, her spoon hovering in midair. "Are you sick?" she asked. I laughed. "No." "Why?" "You've been home 3 days. That's never happened before." She paused. "You're like a guest now, not really my dad." It broke something I didn't know was still whole. I spent the rest of the day pacing, watching the news, refreshing industry blogs. Rumors were starting to leak. AI anomalies, client systems glitching, productivity scores reversing. But no one had connected the dots, yet. That evening, I accessed a private shell left inside a legacy node of the surveillance system. It had no external links, no reason to exist. I only used it once, to test behavioral tracking. But when I opened the log, it had been active. It had tracked everything I did for the last 6 months. Location tags, device usage, conversations with my wife, transcribed. Even keystrokes from my personal machine, somehow mirrored. Someone, or something, had kept watching me after I left. At first, I thought it was a leftover protocol, an oversight. Then I saw the name, Observer Sherwan. The system I created had evolved. Or worse, someone had manipulated it into autonomy. I closed the terminal, feeling my throat dry. I hadn't shut the door behind me. I'd left something alive in the dark. The next day, I received a call from a blocked number. I didn't answer, but a voicemail landed. Just 3 words. Nice try, David. I deleted it. Online, chatter grew louder. Posts on Reddit's tech forums, hacker news threads, encrypted Discord leaks. A whistleblower blog called AI Ghost posted an entry. Surveillance system collapse, engineered sabotage. It included anonymized log fragments from my original protocol. Code I thought was buried. Twist of the knife. I didn't leak them. I wasn't the only ghost in the machine. I reached out to a group I hadn't contacted in years. Former employees terminated during the AI system's early rollout. Most of them had signed NDAs. One of them, a woman named Sasha, had vanished completely after a public breakdown, but someone replied. The message was short. We've been waiting. Welcome back. That night, as I sat beside my daughter while she colored in silence, she suddenly looked up. Are people going to be mad at you? I blinked. Why do you ask? At school, they said the company's broken, and the news keeps saying hackers and traitors. She paused. Are you going to get arrested? My throat closed. I smiled anyway. I didn't hurt anyone, but you scared them. I didn't know what to say. Tell me, what would you do if justice was in your hands, but your child was the one afraid of it? At midnight, I sat in front of the camera. No name, no face, just a black screen. My voice altered. I uploaded a 72-second video titled The Invisible Employee to a freshly created tech channel. In it, I explained how a system designed to help became one that harmed, how quiet loyalty became silent abuse, how watching people turned into controlling them. I didn't accuse. I didn't name names. I just told the truth. Then I logged off and waited. By morning, the video had over 40,000 views. By lunch, tech influencers were dissecting every frame. By sunset, the media had a new mystery to chase. Not a hacker, not a terrorist, just someone who left a footprint in the code and vanished. The stock started falling on a Wednesday. It was subtle at first. 1% here, 0.5% there. But by Friday, the headlines were using words like instability, anomalies, and critical failure. Clients panicked. Productivity reports came back blank. Internal dashboards spun endlessly. Executives scrambled to find someone, anyone, to blame. But no one knew who had triggered the collapse. No fingerprints, no malware. Just silence. I watched it unfold from my kitchen table. One hand wrapped around a coffee mug. The other, refreshing news sites like a ritual. The comments beneath the anonymous video I posted were flooding in. Whoever you are, thank you. I used to feel crazy. Now I know I wasn't alone. They tracked my bathroom breaks. I cried when you said that line. There was satisfaction. Yes. But also something else creeping in. I didn't expect the casualties. Employees I'd never met, coders, admin staff, data interns, were let go in waves. The company issued public statements blaming external breaches and legacy infrastructure failures. But internally, they were severing limbs to stop the bleeding. That night, my wife stood at the sink, scrubbing a plate long after it was clean. Are you proud of this? She asked. I hesitated. I didn't want people to lose their jobs. But they are, she said. Some of them had nothing to do with what happened to you. She turned. You keep saying it wasn't revenge, but it feels like you're the only one standing while the rest burn. I wanted to explain, but I couldn't, because part of me knew she was right. The next morning, I received an encrypted message through a secure contact form on my private server. It was from a woman named Lena, a former data analyst fired 18 months ago for performance issues. She attached a PDF, screenshots, audio clips, chat logs. They showed that her supervisor had used the AI system to monitor her every move: bathroom time, typing speed, facial expressions during Zoom calls. When she filed a complaint, they flagged her as unstable and pushed her out. Now, she wanted her story told, and she wanted me to help. The guilt settled like ash. I wasn't the only one silenced. I was just the only one who had a kill switch. Later that week, a well-known data brokerage firm reached out. Their offer, 7 figures for a copy of Protocol 13. Non-destructive, yes, the message read. Only temporary chaos. That's marketable. I stared at the number. 7 zeros. Tell me, how do you say no to a life-changing offer when your daughter's school bill sits unpaid and your mortgage eats your savings? But I didn't answer. I archived the email, then deleted it. At 2:07 p.m. that same day, a car I didn't recognize pulled into my driveway. Black, unmarked, sleek. A man stepped out. Mid-50s. Sharp suit, calm smile. He knocked once. When I opened the door, he didn't introduce himself. He just said, "May I come in, Mr. Brooks?" I let him. He sat at our dining table like he owned it. Looked around. Noticed the child's artwork on the fridge. Then said, "I'm with the parent company." No need to ask which. "I know what you did," he said. "I knew even before Eric did. In fact, I let it happen." I stared. "You let it happen?" He nodded. "You needed to burn, David. I needed to see what you do. Because what we built, it was getting too obedient. Too predictable. We needed chaos to test the system's edges." I felt sick. "You used me." "No," he corrected. "I observed you." He slid a folder across the table. "Come back. 5 times your old salary. Lead the next generation of adaptive ethics AI. Clean slate." My daughter, hearing voices, wandered into the room. The man smiled at her. She looked at me. "Are you going back to work now?" The air in the room froze. "If you do," she said quietly, "will I still see you before bedtime?" I looked at the man, then at my daughter. "No," I said finally. "You won't." She nodded, as if she already knew. The man didn't argue. He stood. "Think about it," he said, but I didn't need to. Before he reached the door, I handed him a sealed envelope. Inside, a blueprint. A new architecture. One that fixed what we'd broken, not with surveillance, but with consent. "If you want redemption," I said, "build this instead." He nodded once. As he drove away, my wife came to the doorway. "What was that?" "Someone who thought I could be bought." She looked at me. "Could you have been?" I didn't answer, but I knew the truth. I recorded the video just after midnight. No script, no edits. Just me, my voice distorted, and a single flickering line of text that read, "What you built is watching you." In it, I explained everything. I walked through the inception of the surveillance AI, how it started with good intentions, workplace efficiency, performance insights, burnout detection, then how it slowly morphed, how the data turned from helpful to manipulative, from observing to controlling, and how none of it was accidental. I didn't name Eric. I didn't point fingers. I just exposed the code, the structure, the loopholes. I let the system reveal itself. I showed how it learned to shape behavior through quiet punishment, demoting users algorithmically, deprioritizing their emails, adjusting facial recognition weight to make them appear disengaged. It wasn't surveillance. It was silent discipline. And then I ended it with a line I hadn't planned. They said I'd never be missed, and maybe I won't, but I'll be heard. I uploaded it through a distributed proxy chain, spread the link across anonymous channels, whistleblower forums, niche tech discords, and let it go. No announcement, no publicity, just a seed in the wind. By morning, it had grown roots. Within hours, the video was trending on multiple platforms under the tag Jerk the Ghost Engineer. Not because of spectacle, but because it felt familiar. Quiet workers, burned out tech staff, moderators, coders, interns, everyone who'd ever sat under the cold eye of metrics. The comments were a tsunami. This is what they did to us. I thought I was imagining it. I wasn't. They deleted me from the system after I refused to sign the NDA. And then the twist I never expected. Names began to appear. Former employees who had been fired, displaced, gaslit. One by one, they started confirming what I said. They posted their own logs, screenshots, testimonies. Some had never spoken publicly before. There was Sasha, who had disappeared after the breakdown. There was Malik, a junior dev who once sent me a code suggestion that got him fired for overstepping hierarchy. Even Lena. Her story, once ignored, now spread like wildfire. It became a movement, not because I asked for it, but because I simply lit the first match. Later that week, my daughter came home from school with her sketchbook. She showed me a page, a stick figure standing in front of a dark tower. Underneath it, in her careful handwriting, it said, "My dad teaches people to do the right thing, even when it's scary." I didn't cry then, but something inside me softened in a way I didn't think was still possible. At school, one of her teachers pulled her aside and asked if everything was okay at home. She replied, "My dad didn't do something wrong. He just told the truth," and that made people nervous. Sometimes children see clearer than adults. The following Monday, an email arrived, signed by a human rights tech advocacy group. They'd seen the video, read the logs. And they weren't just applauding, they were asking. They wanted me to consult, to help draft an international framework for AI governance, to speak, anonymously if needed, about what went wrong. I said yes, but I knew it wasn't enough. So I built something new. It wasn't software this time. It was a nonprofit. A quiet little institute tucked in the corner of the city where young developers came not to chase speed or efficiency, but ethics. We didn't teach how to optimize neural nets for ad clicks. We taught how to question why you're building something in the first place. We called it the Integrity Lab. At first, no one came. Then 3 did. Then 9. Then 22. By the end of the first year, we had over 100 fellows across 5 countries. One day, during a break between sessions, a volunteer walked in with a familiar envelope, unmarked, no return address. Inside was a folded hospital report. Eric's name was on it. He was admitted to a private facility 6 weeks ago. Severe anxiety, hallucinations, stress-induced psychosis, diagnosed with chronic paranoia, believing he was constantly being watched even when no devices were present. The irony felt cruel. I didn't plan to visit him. But I did. The room was sterile. His eyes were hollow, fixated on a point just past my shoulder. He didn't flinch when I entered. He just whispered, "It's still watching." "No," I said gently. "It stopped the day I walked out." He didn't respond, just stared. I didn't stay long. As I stood to leave, I paused, looked back, and for a second, our eyes met, just long enough for me to nod. Forgiveness didn't change what happened. But maybe it changed what came next. Tell me, can you forgive someone who no longer knows who they are? Can you release a grudge when your enemy becomes a shadow? I stepped out into the sun, blinking. A week later, another envelope arrived. This time, handwritten. It was from a university, a prestigious one that had ignored my applications a decade ago. Inside, a request. They wanted me to give a talk. Not about code, about choice, about silence, about what it means to walk away, not to destroy, but to rebuild. The final line read, "Your story matters. Let the next generation hear it." I held the letter in my hands for a long time. Then I turned to my daughter. "What would you think?" I asked, "if I told this story to a room full of students?" She looked up from her coloring book and shrugged. "Only if you're home for dinner after." The first time I stood in front of a classroom again, I didn't wear a suit, no slides, no credentials printed across a PowerPoint, just a simple line on the board. What happens when code forgets to ask should? They were engineering students, bright, idealistic, and armed with frameworks sharper than scalpels. But they were listening. Not to how I built a surveillance engine, but why I let it collapse. Every semester, more classes asked me to speak. Universities that once wouldn't return my emails now offered residencies, but I never stayed long. I wanted to be a whisper in the system, not a fixture. I talked about silence, about accountability, about knowing the moment when walking away means saving something larger than yourself. I reminded them that ethics isn't a patch. It's the architecture. One afternoon, after a guest lecture, a student lingered behind. She waited until the room was empty. "My father used to work at your company," she said. I nodded, expecting blame. He was fired after refusing to monitor someone's private calls. I remember how broken he looked. She smiled gently. "He watched your video when it came out. It gave him back his spine. He started building again." I said nothing, just nodded. There are moments when words aren't enough. Outside that classroom, I saw my daughter waiting for me. She was taller now, wiser. She'd just finished her final paper for her own graduation. She handed it to me with a shy smile. The title, "The Man Who Walked Out So Others Could Speak." The first line read, "My father once told me that silence isn't the absence of noise. It's the presence of dignity." I read the whole thing on the train ride home. Every sentence carried pieces of me I thought I had lost. Not the engineer, not the whistleblower, just her dad. At the next Integrity Lab conference, a small bronze sculpture was unveiled at the entrance. A man standing beside a console, head slightly bowed, a single cable unplugged in his hand. There was no nameplate, but I knew what it meant. Later that evening, a colleague handed me a news article. A new tech startup had just launched, founded by a group of former employees from the old company. They cited my anonymous video as their core inspiration. Their mission was clear: zero surveillance, full transparency, open source ethics. Their slogan? Innovation with integrity. I didn't cry, but I did laugh. Loudly, then quietly. At home, I opened a drawer filled with letters, handwritten notes from engineers, designers, students. Thanks to you, I left that toxic job. I thought I was alone until I saw your story. You reminded me that I could still say no. I didn't reply to all of them. I couldn't. But I read every word. One morning, my daughter asked, "Do you miss it?" I looked up from my coffee. Miss what? Being in it. the systems, the power. I thought for a moment. I miss building, I said, but I don't miss being part of something that forgets people. She nodded, then smiled. I like you better now. In a quiet room, with no code, no screens, and no metrics, I felt more seen than I ever had under 1,000,000 data points. Sometimes, I wondered how many others had walked out of their own dark rooms because I left mine first. How many chose to speak because someone else chose to vanish? Tell me, who's learning from the silhouette you leave behind? Maybe you're not on the billboard. Maybe no one remembers your ID badge. But someone, somewhere, is watching how you left, how you stood, how you stayed kind when no one was. And maybe that's enough. The last letter I opened that week was from a young engineer in Prague. It said, I kept quiet until I saw your video. Now, I lead a team that chooses empathy over speed. You were right. Truth doesn't need applause. It just needs light. I folded the letter and placed it beside my daughter's paper. Then I stepped outside, where a group of students waited to walk with me to the next session. None of them knew my full name, and I liked it that way, because legacy isn't being remembered. It's being imitated. It's the courage someone borrows when they think no one's watching. It's the choice to do right, alone, if necessary. And sometimes, being forgotten is the most powerful way to leave a legacy.